Aside the continuous rise in the prices of diesel, the insecurity issues in the country has triggered a hike in prices of wheat, which is a major source of material in the making of bread. And this hike has also impacted on the prices of bread, rising from about 400 per loaf to around 700 for a family loaf. Nigeria currently produces about 60,000 metric tons annually, as yearly demand stand at between 4.5 million and 5 million metric tons. And if Nigeria produces only 60,000 tons of the 500 metric tons it consumes, that's a huge market yet untapped. However, insecurity is a major challenge. So let's break it down right now and look at some of the states with the most production capacity and the limiting factor. The first one here, Kano, Jigawa, Kebbi, looking at the state with the highest wheat production in Nigeria. Kano coming first with about 17.6%, Jigawa with about 15.8%, and Kebbi with about 12.0% there. But on the other side, if you look at the state with the lowest wheat production in Nigeria, Borno coming with 4.2%, Adama with 3.7%, Zamfara with about 1.8%. So let's get talking now right away with our guest standing by the Zoom call, Mr. Rio Ladende. He's a policy analyst and also a security analyst as well. He joins us now. Thank you, Mr. Rio, for your time. Hello, Mr. Rio. Hello, Mr. Rio, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yes.
You were lost before.
Okay. I was lost, but now I'm found, right?
Right.
Okay, interesting. All right, glad to have you. Now, the northern states are largely known for wheat farming. However, if you look at the incessant attacks by the Boko Haram insurgents, which has undermined effort to boost local production in recent years, as many wheat farmers have abandoned their farmlands and fled to other regions for safety. First, how do you react? Because at the moment, even the Bread Bakers Association are threatening to go on strike because of the cost of diesel, which has gone up as well. On the other hand, we are also having a problem with the price of wheat going up as well. And then the insecurity issues in the Northeast is not helping matter. How do you respond?
Well, I'm surprised that you call it incessant attack. I call it enduring attack because it didn't just start today. It started a long time ago. And because of lack of preparedness and failure of intelligence, we allowed things to fester, and that's why we are where we are today. You talked of those who ran away for safety. What about those who are killed, who lost their lives mindlessly and needlessly? Because these attacks were carried out sometimes late evening or in the middle of the night or very early in the morning, when people will be ill-prepared, for any attack or the possibility of it happening. For me, the pain initially started with the issue of diesel, but unfortunately, we will be deceiving ourselves if we say that we're not expecting in that shortage of wheat to also join the problem zone. For a while now, in the last 7 years, farming has become drastically reduced due to attacks and insecurity. Initially, it was terrorists of Boko Haram. Later, they were joined by kidnappers. They were also joined by bandits, all of whom together have joined hands to ravage the land that was flowing with milk and honey and is now flowing with blood. It's unfortunate. And it now adds to my own pain because we cannot see any meaningful solution or move to end these attacks. They have continued and they still continue. We will deceive ourselves if we fail to agree that we're already facing food insecurity, which is not peculiar. Ask about beans, corns.
Hello, Mr. Rio. Hello, Mr. Rio. I'm sure you're still there.
Yeah, I'm here, yes.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Now, until the government, now at the federal level, because that's where the control of the army, the police, and other instruments of coercion reside, until they rise up to the occasion and make the country a lot more secure and better than it's been in the last 7 years, I'm afraid we may enter starvation level, which will not be good for us as a nation.
Mm. Now, what are the alternatives here or temporary solution to this now? Because yes, it's here and it's on our table at the moment. And so how do we address the shortages that the country is witness in the wheat production at the moment and of course, the supply chain as well?
Planting is a process. It's not an event. You have to clear the grounds, do all necessary preparation before you plant. And when you plant, you have to wait on God to provide you with the rain, okay, that will fertilize this.
Hello, Mr. Rio. Hello, Mr. Rio, are you still there? Well, I'm sure we're going to have Mr. Rio join us again. We're having a connection problem there. But just quickly look at this. Out of the total wheat produced, Kano accounted for about 17.6%, trailed by Jigawa with about 15.8%. And Kebbi coming in the third place with about 12.0% there. But if you look at Borno, Adamawa, and Zamfara with about 4.2%, 3.7%, and 1.8%, which contribution to the weight capacity of the country. But of course, the question is, what is the alternative here? That's what we're asking. But some again are saying, well, perhaps you have issues with the Northeast more because that's where the bulk of attacks come from, which is Borno. You also have around Adamawa and Zamfara. Maybe a bit of Kebbi and Jigawa as well. But one perhaps may have to look away from Borno because Borno produces about 4.2%, which of course is less than what Kano is contributing by about 17.6%. So perhaps Kano will have to be an option. Maybe Nigeria, like most analysts are saying, Nigeria will have to turn to Kano, which has about 17.6% production capacity to build the country out. Jigawa with about, so the combination of Jigawa, Kano and Kebbi perhaps will be able to carry the country for a short time. But again, let's get back to Mr. Rio. Are you there? Hello, Mr. Rio. Well, perhaps we'll have to get back to Mr. Rio. Let's quickly take a break. When we come back, we'll look at what are the options. Some people have also talked about the fact that we need to look in the way of other countries like US, Canada, and some other producing countries who are producing wheat, because at the moment Nigeria can only produce meet up with about 60,000 metric tons, and that's less significant of what the country is consuming, which is about 5 million metric tons. And so it's a huge market. And so where's the problem? How do we address it? These are some of the issues or questions put on the table, and we hope we can do justice to it. But let's quickly take a break, and I'll be back in a moment. This is Business Breakfast. Glad to have you back now. So let's get straight to the conversation now. Mr. Ario Oladen, the policy analyst and security analyst as well. He joins us now. Thank you for your time. Well, of course, it's one of the challenges that we face, but certainly we will overcome that. So let's get straight to our conversation earlier. I was asking you an alternative that we have here, and you were talking about the fact that we need to plant. Can you hear me, sir?
I'm here with you.
Yeah, so you were talking about the fact that there's a planting process and we have to wait for it. Again, you talk about the issue of security earlier. And so how do we deal with the planting season vis-a-vis harvest season and then the issue of security?
My brother, I said earlier on that we have to resort to import. But the problem is, do we have resources to even import? We are heavily indebted. And the strength of our naira keeps falling terribly against the dollar, which is the global exchange rate platform. I would rather advise people to go out for the alternatives. Otherwise, starving might be the next step that we'll have to resolve. As it is, we have other staple products. We have cassava that can give us gari, lafu, then of course with yam, we still get elibo, and of course yam can be eaten and plantain. Because the way things are, if we say we want to start importing, the earliest that any imported product can come in, if the order is made today as we are talking, will be 90 days. Maybe if they have in stock 30 to 60 days. What will happen between now and that waiting period? So let's just settle for whatever we can. I'm sorry for the beggars. That is the way things are found out. It's a wake-up call now for everybody, the young and the old. Those of us who are voters and who have attained voting age, go and get your PVC so that next time the election comes, you will be looking at people's antecedents, where they are coming from, and not just their planned promises before you will vote for anybody. Unfortunately, we are in this, and there's nothing we can do until the next election. That's my position.
Well, when you talk about, getting PVC, I mean, that's in an event that will take place in the next administration. And this is, yes, this is still far away. Many people will say, okay, this is still far away. But we have an issue at hand that we need to deal with at the moment. And so, so the alternative is what we're looking at the moment. Do you think... Just a moment. Yes.
Because if we think we are importing, there are problems confronting importation as we are. We don't have money. We are broke. We are owing. And the naira is daily falling against the dollar, the global exchange platform. Okay, and even if we make the order as we are talking now, it's not going to come in the next 30 days. So what happens between now and the time? And so people starving needlessly, let them go for the alternative. They have to stay alive and be well too.
I mean, if I get your point correctly, I mean, what exactly the alternative you're talking about here?
Oh, I mentioned yam, I mentioned millet, I mentioned maize, or corn. I also mentioned cassava. From cassava you can get gari, and some cassava species are edible, like yam. And of course, with yam, you can also get yam flour. And yam also is edible, you just boil, and then it's good to eat. Otherwise, if you have to keep hammering on this weak issue, I'm afraid there might be deaths from starvation. It will not be good for anybody. Let me just go for what they can, including rice available, beans available, right? So that was suggestions.
The reason why we're talking about this is because bread is like a common food that everybody wants to buy, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Yes. So do you think that in the interim, Nigerians can do without having to go for bread and going for this, making use of these alternatives? How sustainable do you think this will be?
Now, you and I are agreed on one factor. We do not have the capacity to deliver the volume of weight that we require. And I've also told you now that, okay, what to import, the time it will take to place an order order, do documentation, and then they do shipment that they get here, the clearing process before ultimate distribution. Therefore, we can no longer just fold our hands and be waiting. Unfortunately, I don't eat bread on account of age and the organic lifestyle that I have adopted. But for those who eat bread, they just have to do with alternatives. It would have been nice if there's a magic wand we can shake and then which will land on our land. Government has to go back, as I said earlier on, institute new strategies to confront the insecurity that has ravaged the entire northern area and other parts of the country. Whatever they were doing before that is not winning the game, let them upgrade the intelligence gathering system and infrastructure to see that, okay, they're able to keep steps ahead of attackers and bandits so that they won't be able to wreak havoc again and life can return to normal. Farmers can go back to their farms, and then those who should get what we be able to get them at the appropriate time. Anything short of that will be playing games, and unfortunately, the talking of human life here now, both the young and the old, we can't be playing games with human lives. We can't afford starvation or famine. No, so something has to give, and that is government should upgrade its architecture in the area of intelligence gathering and security generally. While they're doing that, then let us eat whatever we can find within agricultural food network so we can stay alive.
Well, you mentioned the fact that there are bottlenecks in the period of importation, clearing, and all of that. I mean, given the emergency of these kind of issues or development that we have on our hand, should the government take off or take away those bottlenecks? Do you think it will be it's something that can also cushion the effect that we have at hand at the moment?
That aside, global export and importation businesses have been negatively impacted consequent of the crisis between Russia and Ukraine and their allied forces. Let's also not lose sight of that. I'm not sure that getting things in will be as easy as they used to be. The flow is being disrupted, and for that reason, even before we now say let's reduce documentation or put them aside to fast-track clearing process, how about getting the goods in first? The challenges are enormous. We can sit down here and be pontificating, but we'll be deceiving ourselves and our listeners. That's why I said on a realistic level, make do with whatever you can. Let government and maybe private importers who are licensed go ahead and start the process of bringing in whatever they can bring in. But in the interim, do everything you can to stay alive. It will take the living to request for choices. Otherwise, things will not go well.
Now, Nigeria spent about $2 billion annually on wheat importation. And we've seen some interventions from the government in recent time, especially last year, November, the president flagged off wheat farming in particularly in Jos Plateau State last year. And people expect that should impact on the production capacity of the country. $2 billion is huge market for Nigeria. I mean, how do you think we can explore this market and domesticate instead of importing and domesticate this money that we're spending on importation?
Unfortunately, I have come not to trust Mr. President's declarations and statements because in so many instances he has made promises that don't ever get fulfilled. Unfortunately, again, we do not have data to establish that genuinely or truly or honestly now, people in Jos were funded to expand their capacity to produce. Jos or the Plateau State, let me say generally, they've been at war for a long time with bandits, kidnappers, cattle rustlers, and unknown gunmen. So even if they were giving money, where is the land or the farm or the space the farmers will engage to go into wood farming?
Okay.
So the fundamentals are not in favor of the farmers and farming, whatever they want to farm, until the area is made safe and secure, which constitutionally is the number one task given to the government. Until that is ensured and guaranteed, we may not get anywhere. It's a huge market. Over the time, we have discovered it's already known. Elsewhere, they will be protesting if it happened. It happened in Kenya, they increased the price of bread, they went on national strike. We never had that in Nigeria, because the people just easily take things and they move on. That resilience is what I'm now calling on people to take on.
Okay. Okay. Let me stop. Let me come in quickly. Mr. Rio. Permit me to jump in there. Let's quickly, I need you to hold your thought there. Let's quickly take a break. We'll be back to conclude. It's an interesting conversation, and I'm sure you have a lot to say as regards this particular conversation. So let's quickly take a break. We'll be back in a moment. Please hang on. That's what I have you back now. So let's continue the conversation. Mr. Rio Oladende is a policy and security analyst. He's still with us. Thank you for hanging on. Thank you for your time, Mr. Rio. Now, let's talk about, yes, let's talk about, you've talked about the fact that we need to, look outside the wheat sector to other products like yam, cassava as an alternative. But let's also look at them. The Borno contribute about 4.2% to wheat production in Nigeria. Adamawa with about 3.7%. Zamfara 1.8%. Well, for Borno, of course, some people say it is not significant enough. So where do you have the major bulk of contributors to production capacity of the country? It's Kano, Jigawa, and Kebbi. Kano is about 17.6%, Jigawa with about 15.8%, and Kebbi with about 12%. Now, can we rely on this state, especially this state who've not known them, they've not been known to be security, to have security challenges, and so can we turn to this particular state to build the cart for the moment?
You are talking of states that jointly and individually bedeviled by high-profile insecurity on all fronts. We are talking of states that have lost the bulk of their active manpower to needless deaths. We are talking of states where people should be on the farm are in IDP camps, surviving on peanuts and handouts. Therefore, we just have to take our eyes away from them. Okay, while the federal government does the needful in empowering the security agencies, whereby they can stem the tide of insecurity, until that is done, we will be daydreaming to expect that there can be increase in farming activities to whatever extent. Some of the states you mentioned, the governors already admitted that they have lost it. For some of the other states, they are under active control of terrorists and bandits. To that extent, nothing positive can be expected from them unless we are out to deceive ourselves, which of course I know is not our mission. So people have to know the reality and they must address it. Whatever you can find, it's not like if you don't eat bread, you will die. No. Whatever you can find to eat, there are other food items I've mentioned them. They also have the nutrients that you will derive from taking bread. So hope for them and stay alive and be hopeful that a new day will break for the country when normalcy will return to our living system.
Well, the reason why I ask is because by record, Kano State, has not had any tags or insurgency activities around that particular state and its borders in recent time. And since the state, according to data that we have by the NBS or CBN, contribute about 17.6%, many believe that perhaps there should be something good for them, including Jigawa and Kebbi State. That's why I asked that question.
I should think so. But the point is, there is no magic wand that can empower farmers in Kano State to single-handedly increase their capacity and, of course, subsequently increase the output. Okay? This is not an event, it's a process. So it must run the whole cycle. Even if all farmers across the north were moved to Kano, they still have to go through the process. And you and I know where it starts from land clearing. And of course, there are particular weather that suits wheat planting. So you don't just say, let's go and plant. Otherwise, you'll be wasting resources. You have to prepare the ground and wait for the appropriate time before you can plant, and then expect to nurture whatever you might have planted.
Okay, let's look away from the northern state now and come back to southwest a bit of these. Is there a possibility to look inward within the southwestern state and see whether there are some states that have land viable for this particular commodity, as important as it is in the production capacity of Nigeria?
Well, I don't know why the Southwest region has not particularly showed interest in wheat farming. I remember there was a time that watermelon and cucumber were not being planted here, but they were being brought in from the north. But I can confirm today to you that in the Southwest now, we have massive farming, of watermelon and cucumber. If you go to Shogo today, every morning at the city center, they bring in watermelon and cucumber in massive quantities. Maybe we're not using this chance to make it a wake-up call on the government and the people of the Southwest, everybody those in the rural sector, to give it a start and attempt maybe on an experimental scale and see how it's going to pan out. If it works out well, they can think of expansion. But if it doesn't work out well, that is between us and nature will take control. There is nothing we can do. We can't dictate to nature. But I think the weather here is a factor that may not make farming of wheat a good idea. I'm not a farmer, neither am I an agric expert or a weather expert. But I think it has to do a lot with the dependence on nature, not the lack of intention to go into wheat farming.
Let's also look at who should lead the conversation, if we have to even start at all in the southwest, maybe farmers coming together to start a conversation around this. Who should lead, the farmers or perhaps the governor of the state?
We've had this similar thing before when Kebbi was producing rice for Lagos State, which was called Lake Rice, way back. I remember it was very available during the time of Ambode, if my memory is still right. But the corporation went bad, and that was the end of Lake Rice. Unfortunately, Lagos today has a 32 metric tons rice processing plant in the Mota, very close to Ikorodu, which for now is not active. I don't know how much of rice planting people are doing here to feed
I think we should leave it there. Thank you so much, Mr. Ario Ladende. He is a police and security analyst.
Next time,
Thank you so much.